That's why I believe in you, because that is the greatest purpose. It's to love. Honest. It sounds corny, whatever you want to say. I don't care. I love people because there is freedom and power in loving people.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality, and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness, which creates and animates all things. Now, of course, understanding this powerful truth is one thing. Applying this incredibly empowering wisdom to everyday life, well, that's another, which is exactly why we provide you with a fresh serving of soul food for thought 5 days a week to help constantly remind you of what matters most. You are it. And I'm your host, Brandon Beecham. I'm the one who will be here with you each and every Wednesday, interviewing a different consciousness changemaker that is also out there working tirelessly to help catalyze change and expand awareness all across Spaceship Earth. On the other 4 weekdays, you can hear me discussing topics such as my favorite thought-provoking quotes, reading and discussing wisdom from empowering books, playing clips from various inspirational spiritual teachers, sharing a bit of mysterious news, taking questions from the audience, and essentially digging into any other mind-expansive topics that will help keep your soul fed by tuning you into positive vibrations on a consistent basis. And you guys have heard me say that if I ever run ads on the show, it will only be with a company that I fully support because I believe their intention is to make a positive difference in the world. Well, I'm pleased to announce that day has arrived and that this episode of the Positive Head Podcast is being brought to you thanks to the support of Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. All right, all you positive heads. Today, I am not flying solo. I have a longtime listener and friend, Dr. Erica Middlemiss, here with me. Erica is a naturopathic. Am I saying that right?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Good job.
Naturopathic physician, QHHT practitioner, and basically a spiritual metaphysical research junkie. Hey there, Erica. How are you?
Hi there. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you here on the show, and even better to have you here in person with me. It's always that added touch. For you guys, if you don't know, a lot of times the interviews are done remotely. You know, people are all over the place, and in this case, Erica is here, and so it's an added bonus for me. I get to look across from my microphone, and she's there smiling, excited to divulge all kinds of goodness with you guys today. So I'm going to start off with a question that I like to ask everyone who I have as a guest. What's your passion?
My passion is helping people heal and helping people learn how to heal themselves. Because we all have that capacity within us to heal ourselves.
I couldn't agree more. It's one of those things, you probably heard me say it on the show before. I think when we cross over, we'll see that everything was a placebo and it was all, what did you believe? You know, exactly. It's like Dr. Lipton, biology of belief. If you believe it, I've been saying forever, I don't believe in getting sick. And I'm not going to say I've never been sick, but it's very, very rare. I mean, I haven't been in a hospital since the day I was born, and then you have the people who give so much energy to being sick and telling their story of, all their ailments. And of course, that's a big part of their story and their theme and what continues to happen. So,
and like what you always say, where your attention goes, your energy flows.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
If you're concentrated on being sick, then you will stay sick.
Right. So tell us a little bit about how you came to be this junkie,
Well, not unlike most, I had some catalytic experiences in my life that led me to seek more answers. Mm-hmm. What is this all about? What are we doing here? Why does this have to be so hard?
Mm-hmm.
And I had a really rough Saturn Return.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't know what that is, around 27, 29-ish, you go through the Saturn Return.
Right.
Where Saturn comes back into your birth chart.
Right.
And it creates all sorts of havoc, and karma can come up. So for me, that was my catalyst to go and look and find out really what's out there in the universe. And so I started reading Taoism, and I had, I don't know. I've always wanted to be a doctor since I was 3 years old.
Right.
It was like I wanted to learn how it all worked.
Right.
How this whole thing functioned. And so being a healer was always in me.
Mm-hmm.
And after having all those experiences, I had to teach myself to meditate, because it was like when you get that stressed out, what can you do? You have a couple choices. You can take some medication, or you can figure out how to do this for yourself.
Right.
And so I started meditating, and it all kind of just came from there. One thing built on the next. You learn one thing, and that leads you to another.
Right. And so becoming a doctor, I mean, can you explain a little bit about, sort of that process and what all you learned, what your sort of discipline is?
Sure. Well, so when I first went to college to study biology pre-med, I was going the regular track.
Right.
Sophomore year in college, took biochemistry. And in biochemistry, I learned that the body likes things that are natural, things that it recognizes.
Right.
Things that are just like it.
Right.
And anything that it doesn't recognize, it fights, it tries to get rid of.
Yeah.
And that to me was a huge eye-opener. What are we doing with our medicine here? None of this is natural.
Right.
And I was very, very lucky to have to go take a class at another school, because I was really bad at physics. Actually, I'm lying. It wasn't physics. It was organic chemistry. I just could not pass this class. I don't know what it was. I could not pass this class. So I got a D, but that wasn't good enough. Okay?
Right.
So I went and I took it at the school down the street. I wound up getting a B in that class. But while I was there, the teacher told me about naturopathic medicine. I had never known about it before. And then I started researching and found there was only 4 schools in the country. And there you learned all about botanical medicine, homeopathy, clinical nutrition, Chinese medicine and acupuncture, mind-body medicine, the whole gamut.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, this exists. So that's the route I went.
How long was the schooling process for that?
4 years post-grad.
Okay. Gotcha.
So just like regular medical school, the first 2 years are going to be all your basic sciences. And then the last 2 years is when you get into all the natural modalities.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Very cool. Now, these days you have, you're not as focused on that whole world.
Right.
Is that correct? Exactly. You are doing QHHT, right?
I am.
That's your primary focus at this moment.
It is.
You have a few things that we're going to talk about, but why don't you tell everyone a little bit about QHHT and what's going on with that?
Well, first, I want to tell you why I came to this method. So I've been a practicing physician now for over 10 years, doing naturopathic medicine, which means I help people with different, say herbs or supplements or diet changes. And I've had patients who, no matter what they do, no matter how much effort they're putting into taking care of their physical body, they still stayed sick. And it was always that mind-body level where they were keeping themselves sick. Their mind was sick, and so therefore their body was also. So, whatever your mind doesn't want to handle, your body then has to. That's kind of the rule. Every catalyst is presented to your mind first. If you ignore it, if you repress it, whatever it may be, then it comes to your body, because this is a lesson that you have to learn. So you're forced to learn with it when the body's hurting, right? You have no choice.
Right.
So what I found with all of these patients was that they needed a way to get to that mind level. All the counselors and journaling and affirmations sometimes just don't do it. I had so many people that just still couldn't get there. So with QHHT, it was a way to get in direct contact with your higher self and find out exactly what it is that your mind is trying to tell your body.
Right.
Why are you sick? Why are you going through all of these lessons in your life? Why did you choose these things? What is your purpose here? And when you know these things, the symptoms of the body can fall away because you don't need them anymore. You learned it in the mind.
Right, right. So can you share a little bit about the history of, because it's quite fascinating, Dolores Cannon and how it works and what the whole process is like?
Sure. So Dolores Cannon, she passed away a couple years ago. She started as a traditional hypnotist working with her husband in the military. Mm-hmm. And they did the normal stop smoking, weight loss type thing. Well, she had an occurrence where they had put someone under and the woman had gone spontaneously into a past life.
Right.
And so Dolores, being so curious, wanted to figure out more about this and how to actually do that on purpose.
Right.
So that's what she did. She wound up developing this method, this technique that brings you into a past life. And then the kicker to this that makes it different from all other hypnosis therapies is that you get direct contact with your higher self. And that's where the therapy is.
Right.
You know, you can get a lot of information from a past life, but it's the higher self that really is the main meat of what you want to get to. Right. You know? So she did this for over 40 years and really perfected this beautiful technique. It's amazing. And what's so cool about it, we have practitioners all over the world all getting the same results that she did.
Right.
I get them.
Right.
A lot of it's amazing to hear all the stories that practitioners have of healing, and even some of the past life stories are just so amazing. Yeah. So, you know, you get your healing and you get your curiosity satiated at the same time.
Right. So,
you get to learn
I actually did a QHHT session recently, as we've discussed, with a friend and listener, Mary Beth, who is here locally, who, by the way, any of you guys in the LA area, if you are interested in QHHT, I would love to connect you with Mary Beth. She is awesome. And you are, Erica, you're located in Arizona.
I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Yeah. So we have any of you listeners in those areas, QHHT, you're interested, look it up. And what it stands for Quantum Healing
Hypnosis Technique.
Yeah. Right. So essentially what happens is you're guided through a guided kind of meditation. And then, you know, you're just taken on a journey and you ask questions beforehand. You write down questions for the, you know, the practitioner to kind of ask you and your higher self. And it's a couple hour process, right?
I spend a good half a day with people, 5-6 hours sometimes. Because, Right.
Yeah. I think mine, I spent like 3 or so, but that's really intense.
It is, because I spend a couple hours getting to know you.
Yeah.
I want to find out all about you. Yeah. How'd you grow up? Why are you who you are?
Right.
You know, what's affecting your life right now? And then we go into the session and you go through a past life. Then we call in your higher self, and then I ask all the questions that you brought.
Right.
So yeah, that's how it
and
goes.
Some of the things that come through, I mean, some of the stories and experiences that people have are unexpected.
Always. You never have any expectations because you'll always get the opposite of what you expect.
Yeah.
Something completely different.
Yeah. And, you know, it's, you actually had an experience that was pretty interesting, and it kind of ties into all kinds of other things that are out there being talked about. And even it kind of tie into a show that we both have tuned into. Yes. And probably some of the listeners have. You guys may have heard me mention it before, because I find it fascinating. On Gaia.com, there's a show called Cosmic Disclosure. And this guy, David Wilcock, author, very interesting individual who I should have on the show sometime, intend to have on the show sometime. He basically does interviews with a guy named Corey Goode, and Corey Goode is claims to be part of the secret space program for 20 years. And he goes into, there's just hours and hours of these guys talking about all the things that are happening behind the scenes. So it's sort of in the, kind of conspiracy theory, realm. But a lot of the information, you and I were talking about it earlier, Eric, and I was like, well, either this Corey guy is a really good liar or he's done some cool stuff. But what was really fascinating about your story, of course, was you had some synchronicity even tying in with your own QHHT session. Because, on the other side, not as the practitioner, but as the patient, right?
As the patient, yeah.
And it tied into a lot that they were talking about on their show. And I would love to hear a little bit about that story. Or you've told it to me, but I want the listeners to hear.
Sure, yeah. So if you guys have seen the Cosmic Disclosure series, you'd have to watch this because I'm not going to go over it, and you'll see the similarities in my own session. The cool thing is, there was a series of 3 that they did with William Henry. The second one that they did was the day I had this session. Mm-hmm. So the last 2 I didn't see before this session. So that's a lot of confirmation for me, which is really nice. So I went in and I saw myself. I thought I was a flight attendant.
Now, keep in mind, guys, I'm in trance. She's in trance mode, right? And being guided to see whatever it is she's meant to see, right?
Yes. So the way this works, you're guided to see whatever is most appropriate for you to see. And your higher self decides on what that is. So when you come down into the scene, you start to get a picture. And as you get into it deeper, it starts to get more clear. So at first, when it was unclear, I thought I was a flight attendant on a plane in that little area that you first walk in. And as it became clear, I saw myself putting these stones that looked like paperweights, flat on the bottom, round on top, on these trays that I then put into a drawer. And when the drawer closed, it was like, when you give a prisoner food through the slats? Mm-hmm. So I did that, and the slats then put those stones into a space station. It took me a while to figure this out in trance, but so what those stones were, they contained knowledge, energies, and I was putting them in a report station in space.
Your average everyday, everyday space station experience.
Exactly. So what this report station then is, so you've all heard of the Akashic Records, and those are the records of everything that's happened on Earth. Well, the report station is the records of everything that's happened in this solar system.
Solar system or galaxy? Or something beyond the Earth?
Who knows? I'm going to say solar system.
Right.
And so that was my job, was to put these stones in this report station. And the reason why that they're there is so that everyone has access to them. And the way you get access to them is through personal work and meditation. So everyone has access to this knowledge.
Interesting.
And that is the most amazing thing to me. And all you need to do is put that personal effort at work and meditate.
Intention.
And you will get all the answers that you need. So that was a really nice part of the story. So moving along, after I did that, I went through another part of the ship that turned into a big dome, big white glass panel dome that looked like the inside of a Louvre, of the Louvre, but it was a dome, all white in there. In the middle of the room, there was this gray table, and on the table was a glass pad. And I walked up to the glass pad and I started pressing it. And as I did that, on the left-hand side of the screen, star coordinates pop up.
So are you pressing it and it's like you're sort of looking through this being's eyes, right?
I feel like at this point, I am this being.
Right. Okay.
You feel like it is
and when
you.
you're pressing it, it's like you know what you're doing too.
Yes.
So you have the knowledge of this other part of yourself or what have you.
And the practitioner who had me out asked me, how do you know where to press?
Right.
And my answer was, I don't know. I just know.
Yeah.
I just go over and I know where to press and I press it. So when I did that, I inputted the coordinates And the wall of the ship in front of me then became transparent. Mm-hmm. And I could see out in front of me. Mm-hmm. And we were just driving through space.
Wow.
Now, I say we. It was just me, though. I was by myself, but...
Wow.
Yeah.
What an experience.
Very cool. And I went back to a station where, the place where you report back to, kind of like the main place where everyone else is. Uh-huh. We each had our own pods that we lived in. And very military looking, just bland and nothing in the room, but it was just the place that after work you go back to rest. Now, we didn't need to rest, but it was just what you do to maintain your energy. So when I was done with that job there, I thought I was going to go back to work, and I was standing out on the deck looking out to space, taking it all in. And I looked back to my ship that was parked on the dock, and it was a different ship. The stairs of the ship had turned blue. And I walked up those steps to get on my ship, and it was a different ship. It was now a pod. And it was a pod that I laid down in. This is where it gets really interesting with Corey's story, and what William Henry was talking about.
On cosmic disclosure, right?
Yes, because they talk about this blue orb ascension vehicle. So I lay down in the pod, and my practitioner had me look at myself. I was wearing a long blue robe. It was very comfortable. And I lay down in the pod, and I knew it. It was a death pod. And it was...
That sounds intimidating.
But...
Just climb into the death pod. No big deal.
When it's your time to go, you just know it, and it's okay. My job is done. It's time to go on to the next level.
Well, I'm sure you, as that being, understood the fact that death is a birth and birth is a death, and there is no. It's just transitioning states, right?
Yes. So I get in the pod. I lay down. It shoots me out to space. After I realized that it was a death pod, and then this pod turns into a blue orb. Now, you guys, I don't know, you probably can't hear me getting emotional about it, but every time I talk about this, it's so powerful, that feeling of the love that was contained in that energy. Wow. And so at that point, I was a blue orb floating above the earth. And I looked around, and there's so many of us. Wow. So, what a beautiful experience. Yeah. And they're all just up there waiting for calls. Like their job is to help, and they come when they're called. Wow. So my practitioner took me to a call. She said, "What happened?" And I hear it, and I just go. It's like you travel in thought in an instant, and you're there. And so you guys might relate to this. If you've ever had one of those moments where you're so sad and you're crying and you don't know what to do, you just feel a little distraught, and you say, "Oh, help me!" You just look up, and then all of a sudden you feel okay for a second. That's why. Interesting. It's because your orb, your higher self, came down and surrounded you, like literally enveloped you in them. Beautiful. So I had that experience. Yeah. Wow. Super powerful.
So you got to be on the other end, sort of helping. Were you helping yourself in that call in another state, or was it someone else that needed help, or what was?
I don't think it was me. Okay. It was a girl, and she was wearing a white dress, and she was kneeled down in the grass, and she was just so heartbroken. No. And I could feel her pain. Wow. Wow, that's powerful. Yeah.
I mean, what's so cool is being here to see you talk about it. I mean, you're like so emotional because you can tell, like, this was such an intense experience for you.
Very intense. Yeah. And that's how you know it's real. Yeah. Those emotions. Yeah. Yeah. I can't make those up. I'm the worst actress in the world. But, I mean, and as an aside, I've had grown men, bawling hysterically, right, in trance, because it's so real. Yeah. And they're in it. Yeah. So from there, what was cool is I got to go to source.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. Because you don't die as a blue orb.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
Right.
What do you do from there? So the other neat thing about that was, so I go to Source and I was bored.
Mm-hmm.
It was so much love and so much peace. Just beautiful nothingness. But I was bored. You know, I like to be out. I said, I like to be out experiencing.
Yeah.
I like to be out helping, doing the doing, you know? And I said, I want to split off again. So that was a really neat experience.
I mean, was the Source experience like, I'm assuming it was super blissful for some level of
But from
time.
going from the blue orb to Source, it didn't change much.
Oh, really?
It was very much that same sense of overabounding love. But Source had so much more peace. Vast nothingness of peace and love. I mean, it's hard to describe what that feels like.
Right.
But the coolest part about that is, you know, she said, well, make sure you can come back. I had to ask someone, and Archangel Gabriel came.
Oh, wow.
And so I asked him, and he said, you can come back here whenever you want. You just think of it. You close your eyes and you come back here. That's
cool.
Yeah. So everyone can do that.
Merge with Source, essentially.
Yes. I mean, every day you can close your eyes and you can just put yourself there.
Yeah.
Source is within you.
Right.
Every cell in your body is Source.
Where attention goes, energy flows, right? So
Yeah. So anytime you're upset or life's not going your way or whatever it may be, close your eyes and just get with Source.
Yeah.
It feels so good.
Yeah. And realizing what a comforting thing to know whenever you're never really alone, right? I mean, anytime you are feeling sad or down or disconnected, it's like, take a moment and deliberately, intentionally reconnect. What a powerful tool to have that think of it. How many of you listening are not using that as much as you could? I know I'm not, right? And it's like, but then you hear it and it's like, duh, yeah, it is within you. There's no question about it. It's like, you are connected. What if I turn my attention to enhancing that connection in any moment that I'm feeling disconnected? So simple, but so profound.
So true. And every time one seeking starts, it compounds then the next. And there's this rule of squares, not doubles. So you start with your cornerstone, your foundation, with one seeking, your second seeking. Then the third seeking is actually going to be like 9 because it squares. Get it? Because the energy goes that way.
Yeah. So essentially, what you're saying is like exponential. It's exponential growth, exponential development. I talk about that sort of thing all the time. It's like, it takes us forever to go from 1 to 2, but then you go 2 to 4 and then 4 to 8. And so it's this compounding. So the more you work on something, the quicker things sort of expedite. There's definitely a quickening happening on this planet right now with people. I mean, like hearing this story, if I'd heard your story years ago, I'd been like, oh my gosh. Now it's like, okay, it's really, really cool. But I have so many people that I connect with, and obviously through the show and outside of the show, it's just like, there's just so many like incredible magical stories all around all the time. More and more people tuning in, tapping in to, experiences beyond the 5 senses that we're so accustomed to in this dimension, right?
It's so true. Well, we have more and more volunteers coming now because of the quickening of the earth, because of the earth ascension.
Yeah.
And so more volunteers are coming in every day to help.
You talk about volunteers, and that's something that Dolores talked quite a bit about, right? Like indigos and crystal children. And you want to touch a little bit on her teaching there?
Sure.
And what your thoughts are there?
Yes. So Dolores wrote a book called 3 Waves of Volunteers and the New Earth. And what she had found through all of her hypnosis clients, now meanwhile, this is thousands of people all over the world.
Right.
And what's neat about her work is that she would get one piece of information in Australia, one piece in England, one piece in Arkansas, that all were exactly the same thing that tied together. Those people didn't know each other. They had no idea what she was looking for. So this is how she came up with this material. And what she was finding, that there were 3 waves of volunteers, people who came from higher densities to come back to help Earth at this time because of what we're going through and how hard this transition is for us, mainly because of our consciousness here, because we're not being loving as a whole, which we need to do, which is why you're here doing this beautiful podcast for all of us, so everybody can focus on that love. That's what the earth really, really needs right now. And that's why all these volunteers are here.
Right.
So she found 3 waves in her work, right? I happen to think that there's been waves coming for a really long time, and there are still waves to come.
Right.
But, in her work, she found these 3 waves. The first wave had the hardest time because they were like the way showers for us. And they're the ones that are here that feel like, I don't like this place. People are mean. I just want to go home.
When did this wave start, according to her? Or did she give a time frame?
Yes. These would be people who are in their 70s around now.
Okay.
60s, 70s.
Gotcha.
Then you have your second wave, which is going to be the 30, 40-year-olds right now.
Like our age range.
Our age.
Okay.
Yep. And we didn't have it as hard. We came in with knowing their experience. And then there's the third wave, which is the kids, the indigo, the crystals. That's what a lot of them are being called, even though I don't always love those names, but
right.
You get what we're saying when we say that. So, and these kids are like, geez, they are such beautiful souls. Their energy is so...
It's like the story of the girl that I reported on last week.
Yeah.
Or a couple weeks ago, by the time this is released. The 9-year-old who changed the water and was channeling extraterrestrial languages and had all this wisdom, and she's like 9 years old. It was wild.
Have you seen Daniel the Crystal Kid?
I think I have. Yeah.
He does crystal grids and he tells you how they work. And
Who was it? Someone was just here at my house. Oh, who was it? Someone was just actually at my house who knows his mother.
Oh, yeah?
Actually, it might have been Nixie who co-hosted some episodes. You guys know. I think maybe it was her. I don't know. I have so many magical people, but yeah, someone knows his family. So.
But they come to other waivers, right? Because we understand them better and we can help them and not stifle them. And that's something that's so important. Dolores found that a lot of these kids are being misdiagnosed as ADHD kids because they're bored. They're straight up bored. They know way more than you do. They're here to teach you.
Right. Well, I think that's the thing. In the old school kind of mentality, going back even a couple generations, it was like children are to be seen and not heard. And it's like now you have these children that are incarnating that are like, way more advanced in their spiritual growth. It's like, okay, just because they've incarnated in the physical dimension after you says nothing about the scorecard as far as their soul development. Right. And so I think there's more and more of us that are able to see that and appreciate that. So when I'm even talking to my own child, I mean, when he was, little, 2, 3, 4 years old, people would be floored by his energy and the way he would speak to them. And it was just like, he's an impressive, teenager now, right?
He certainly is.
But as a little kid, it was like shocking to people because you would talk to him at 4 years old and he'd be talking to you like he's 25 and he's like, and he was so tiny too. He was like really small for his age. So it's like, what in the world is going on? Who is this little human? And so there's so many of these and he's so clear. Like, it's like, you can just sense when you talk to one of these young people who it's like, oh, you don't have any of the baggage. You didn't come here with that baggage. You didn't come here with the work to do. You came here to help. And it's the difference. And it's fascinating. They
came already on that higher vibration.
Right.
Because the earth is already in that higher vibration. So these kids don't have the problems that we do with these vibrations, right? So this is another thing that Dolores talks about. So our age is going to have symptoms of this kind of mismatch in vibration. Things like ringing in the ears, heart palpitations, all sorts of different.
That's something that my brother has a lot of issues with heart palpitations, actually. And, so it's interesting that you bring that up because he is someone who is like really sensitive to, energy and like empathic. He has had a lot of like experiences, like out of body experiences and things that what's interesting about him. I'm the one who wants all those types of experiences and haven't had as many as he has. And yet there's some level of like, he's more closed to this stuff than I am, but yet he's more sensitive in some ways. So it's really interesting that you say that, because I think of him and where he's at in his own development and having palpitations. It's like, because he's kind of like, sort of like resistant to a small degree, not a major degree. I mean, he would acknowledge all this, if I had him on the show and we talked about the ultimate nature of reality and all these things, he would acknowledge, that he agrees with pretty much my same thought process, yet he's not as like passionate about it, and it's not a part of his world. It's almost like there's a resistance to it. Like, oh yeah, I just want to be, in the physical world, and, and I have some questions about, he's had some hardship and tragedy, in his life that makes him even question a little bit, like, I don't understand why this would happen, kind of thing. But so it's interesting for you to mention palpitations, because knowing him and knowing how there's like this sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, so it's just a great example.
Yeah. Raising our vibration right now is really important, not just for us, but for the earth.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that is to focus on love. It's really that simple.
Well, we talked about this a little bit earlier, and how even this, you referenced the show, Cosmic Disclosure, David Wilcock and Corey Goode and the Secret Space Program. And, David Wilcock's whole thing, I mean, the guy's so smart and like so much information pours out of this guy, but he seems to have he's very much into the kind of the conspiracy theory kind of stuff, what's happening. Sure. And, I understand, I believe that a lot of that is happening. I'm open to it. I can't say for sure, but it's also like where attention goes, energy flows. And it's like, okay, you're giving a lot of energy towards this, this sort of negative stuff that's happening. How about let's give it no attention and let's focus on love and, our personal vibration. And that's where I have a little, although I find it fascinating too. Me so it's too. It's an interesting, like, some people would say, well, you can't ignore things and make them go away, but I'm not so sure. I'm like, if I'm the sort of the lead actor, director in my own private movie and everything is a reflection of me, I'm the center point of my own universe. You're the center point of your own, we're just reflections in each other's movies, right? Well, so, okay, who's to say I can't just ascend into my own version of Earth, that it doesn't have, these things kind of fall away because I gave them no energy. I don't know.
That's I think, how it works.
Yeah. I lean more towards believing that than I need to bring all the darkness to light and give it tons of energy and tons of my thought and try and weed it out. It's like, it will kind of do that on its own. I think if you don't give it any of your precious energy, if you are literally the creator of your own private universe, right?
Exactly. You create your own reality. There's a reason why every teacher, ancient religion, I mean, everybody says this.
Right.
There's a reason why we've been talking about this for so long. This is another thing that Dolores talks about in her teachings. You're focused on your life right now. And yes, you could turn on the news and you could see war and you could see, all sorts of bad things happening in your own community. But is that happening in your backyard? Is that your life? Is that your reality?
Right.
That's the difference. Mm-hmm. What have you created in your immediate world?
Yep. What's bumping up against you today?
Yes. What are your mirrors today?
Right.
Everything that you see is your mirror. Everything.
Yeah.
And especially those things that you don't like. Right. Those are the ones you should really be paying attention to.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, they're there to teach you, and so...
Yes. This whole thing is just, we're only here to learn.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. You're just here to learn. You're here to learn, experiencing as little creators. You are a creator.
But also, yes, absolutely, I couldn't agree more. It's like, it's all about growth, right? Yep. Learning, growth. But also, it's meant to be a celebration. It's meant to be joyous.
Yes,
I think sometimes you got to be careful with... We're here to learn and grow, which we're talking all the time about on the show, but keep it light. Because if it gets into like, oh my God, think of those times where you're so buried in school and you're just miserable, like you're having no joy in it. It's supposed to be a fun learning experience, not this, hellacious, miserable experience that you've got to suffer and, all those things.
Well, we're supposed to be learning the lessons of love.
Right.
That's what we're supposed to learn.
Right. Exactly. That's the funnest kind of learning there is, right?
It is. And also the most difficult, as we all know.
Now, you do a blog as well that people can tap into and
I'm
follow.
just getting it up and running. So I have about 4 real articles on there right now.
Cool. Well, that's a great start. And
Yes.
where can people find that?
drerica.org.
Dr. Erica?
ERICA.
ERICA. DRERICA.org. Got it. All right. Well, now seems like a good moment to take a quick minute to tell those of you who aren't familiar a bit about our sponsor, Gaia. I've been a big fan of Gaia for many years now, which is why they're the only content provider I've ever reached out to in regards to potentially supporting the Positive Head podcast. So needless to say, I'm very excited they're now supporting the show. Gaia truly is my personal go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web. They have an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. Just to give you an example, on May 1st on the show Wisdom Teachings, host David Wilcock explores the scientific proof of ascension, DNA activation, and how interplanetary climate change is made possible with nested spheres of energy emanating from the galaxy. I mean, it'd be pretty hard to be more up my alley, right? As you guys all constantly hear me say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to go deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place I know of to do it, period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. So you wrote an article that you were telling me about. I didn't have a chance to read, but you were telling me about it, and I thought it was pretty interesting. You were talking about belief versus proof, or belief over proof.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Really fascinating.
Yes. So, we live in this world where science kind of rules. We want science to prove to us that certain things are true. Well, that's a tough one for me because I like to prove things to myself, my own inner knowing. What's true within me.
Right.
And
back to the personal universe, lead in your own movie again.
Right. And I start my article with, we all believe in God. Well, most of us anyway, but we can't prove it. We'll never prove it, but we all have this belief. And when you look at the flip side of it, when you have to prove a belief like that, what does that then do to your belief system? Does it kind of invalidate it a little bit or make it not so strong when it comes from outside of you? If someone tells me something is true, okay, but if I've learned it's true, if I know it for myself, good luck trying to convince me otherwise.
Right? Absolutely.
And so essentially this is what the article is about. And I find myself questioning whether we as a society are like perpetually recreating this Adam and Eve story, kind of, eating from that tree of knowledge, wanting to know what the gods know when it's just not for us to know in this life.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, what do you believe? That's what's important. Some things just don't need to be proved.
Right. Right.
Through meditation, that's where we get that's where I get all my truths. That's where I get my communication. It's also funny to me, aliens have brought these messages throughout time to people and no, that's their higher self.
Right.
That higher self is that alien in that other dimension.
Right.
But that's the thing. That's your inner knowing, your higher self, like you said, always with you, never not with you. You always have this direct source. So you have this access to all knowledge all the time.
Right.
What do you need to prove it for?
Right. Yeah, well, I think people are, and of course you have those people who are so, and as a doctor, I'm sure you've come across it a lot. People that are so scientific based and they feel like they have to have, what's the research and study and, all these techniques of proof, that are really it's not like these scientific methods are certainly not foolproof.
They're not.
Anyway.
And that's how I came to this belief.
Right.
Because I'll see patients that come in, they've been through the gamut of the allopathic medical route. They feel sick. There's something wrong. They come in, I run their labs, we do all these tests. The labs say they're fine. There's nothing to prove that they're sick.
But yet they're feeling awful still. Yeah.
So guess who I'm going to believe?
Right.
That patient.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely. So, Erica, you are also working on your first book now, right?
I am, yes.
And tell us about that. It's tied into the well-known Law of One.
It is.
Series, or is that a series, or is that just one?
It's a 5-book series.
Okay, I thought it was a series. Yeah, I haven't read them, and they've popped up so many times.
Well, Wilcock talks about them.
What's that? Yeah. He talks about them a lot. Someone who else? I was on a show on another podcast, and that host was really into Law of One as well. It's just something that's popped up time and time again. So, but your book, it's sort of, well, tell us. It's like you're sort of trying to help interpret Law of One because it's a little hard to follow and
tough to read.
Yeah.
So I'm, as a doctor, I've had to read all sorts of, journal articles, and I get used to reading all these big words, and I can break them down, and it's easier for me. But it's not easy for a lot of people, and most people would pick up this book and put it down because they have to use a dictionary in order to read it. And I did too.
Right.
So
talk about, well, first, why don't you share like the premise of it's channeled material, right?
It's channeled material from the 1980s. It was done by a group of 3 people, and that's significant. When you have that power of 3 there, it's a very protected, very loving, they said narrow band connection.
Interesting.
Yes. So the information that came through was from a very high density, 6 density level. And so there was the woman who was the instrument, they called her, and she's the one who, Ra, the sun god, you've heard of him before. This is who was channeled, this ancient Ra. And so the 5 books are a question and answer series with this communication. And they asked all sorts of questions. Now, the main thing that that Ra was trying to communicate was the Law of One. And the Law of One is basically, we're all one. There's nothing but love. And that's it. That's the main thing.
That's a short book.
Yeah, it should be, right? But we're all one. It's all love. Okay, you come from love, you go back to love.
Right.
But there's 5 books.
Yeah.
That go into, so
a lot to talk about in there.
The questioner, he asked lots of different questions about healing, about pyramids, why were they built, that kind of stuff. There's lots of neat historical information.
Cool.
But what I did when I read through them, I've read these books now, let's say 5 times, because I read them once, I read them again, I read them a 3rd time taking notes. Now I go through my notes and I'm organizing it, and I'm not rephrasing it. I'm keeping the true message. And that's what's taking me so long, is to really make sure I say what was said without twisting it. But I want to make it readable for people. It's such an important message to get out there. And I just want to simplify it for people. So I'm simplifying it.
Cool.
And I'm breaking it down into mind, body, and spirit, and how to heal yourself on all of those levels, how they all work together, all the different relationships, your chakras, everything.
Cool.
Yeah. And, your higher self, I'm going to talk about.
So it's like Law of One for dummies.
Kind of. We don't want to call it
now
that.
everyone's going to feel like an idiot if they read your book. I'll be the first idiot. I sign up. I'll be the volunteer. Head dummy. So do you have a name for your book yet?
No, not yet.
Okay.
That's going to come.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I'm sure once it does come out and, is birthed into this dimension, we'll be able to find it and hear about it on your blog.
I gave myself a deadline of June 2017.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's not too terribly far away.
No, but I've been working on this book for 5 years.
Wow.
This Law of One's no joke.
Yeah.
It's really complicated.
Yeah.
And to understand it is the trick.
Right.
You can read it and know what it says, but do you understand it?
Right.
It's very complicated.
Interesting.
And plus, you have to learn to think in layers of an onion.
Yeah, right.
So like, what layer am I thinking about this from?
Right. Yeah, see, it reminds me of, I'm anxious for you to either read Oneness or me to read Law of One, because Oneness is one of my favorite lesser known channel material. And I always refer to it as sort of the guidebook for ascension. It's just, it's such incredible perspective, and I feel like it's really telling you, here's what you can expect as you continue on your journey in physicality, and as you sort of ascend, you're going to hit this, then you're going to see this, and you're going to see this challenge, and you're going to see a swinging back of the same lesson, and then you're going to think you've gotten over it, and it just goes into all. It's like, here's how it's going to go for you. Expect these things. And I know for me personally, I've definitely seen reflections of what is told and comes through to be true in my own. So
it's true then.
Yeah, so I know it's true. I don't need a scientific study.
Exactly. Yeah, the universe told you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, that's super fascinating. I look forward to checking that out, and maybe we'll have you back on, once your book is out there, and we can go into great detail of all the stuff that's covered.
Absolutely. Because I'm putting, a lot of the information that Dolores found through her clients, a lot of the same information, almost verbatim. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and even tying back to this cosmic disclosure, I know in the episodes I've seen, David Wilcock many times will say, Corey Goode will come through with some information that he's learned in the Secret Space program, and, through, all the information that he had access to in that world. And oftentimes David will say, that's exactly like what's said in Law of One.
Yes.
So it seems like there's a lot that can tie back to it from different areas. Here, Dolores Cannon ties back, that's why I'm anxious for you to read the Oneness too, to see if there's like, this is like the correlation. Because that's the thing. I mean, a lot of times there's so much information out there, but you can certainly hear, concepts or ideas that are, that don't jive with one another, right? And does that mean someone's lying, making up? No, I think it's, could it be someone making something up completely? Sure. But I think oftentimes it's like any information, especially when we're bringing it through from beyond the physical dimension, or it's coming through, it's like you've got your human filters on it, and there's no way to avoid that happening, and someone's experiences coloring some, what they're getting and picking up on. So
your conscious mind always gets in the way.
Yeah, to some degree, right?
Yeah.
Of course, you hear the saying, there's a bit of untruth in every truth. It's true. Like, so the dichotomy of this world is enough to make you go nuts if you're not careful.
It's true. And I think it's important to also understand, like, you'll never understand everything.
Yeah.
This is an infinite universe that we live in.
Yes.
Holographic infinite universe. And it's just not for us to know everything in this.
Right.
That's impossible.
And then we're trying to sort of discern through this limited fractalized perspective of source. We're trying to interpret and understand what's coming through and what our perceptions are and what we're picking up on psychically and energetically. And yeah, it's just all going to be colored always, right? In some way, shape, or form. So let's see here. Synchronicity. Do you have a story of synchronicity, serendipity? Something that would be
let's
good
tie
to
this
share,
all
because
into
you
what
guys
I've been
know I'm a sucker for you've been listening to the show for a while. I'm a sucker for synchronicity stories, so we've had some good ones already. What do you got? Some?
You guys, I experience synchronicities every single day, and I didn't always, but the more I meditate every day, and the more I pay attention and listen to my higher self, and the more I ask my guides to help me, that's huge. The more I see them, right? And I also think that you can work with your guides and say, all right, you guys, I just saw this number. And when you show me that number, it means XYZ to me. So don't show me that number if that's not what you mean. And they will work with you.
Right. This is how you can play, right?
This is how you play. Right. So my synchronicity story that ties into what I've been talking about today is when I started this spiritual seeking journey, I was a big fan of David Wilcock back in the day, and he was talking about, writing down your dreams and really getting into your dreams, because this is how your higher self speaks to you. Mm-hmm. And so I started to journal. My very first dream journal, I woke up that morning. I remembered this long, long, long dream, but I couldn't write it down because I had this neon sign in my head that said 222. It's just bright, bright, bright neon. But I was refusing to write that down.
Mm-hmm.
So finally I said, fine. And I wrote down the 222. And then the rest of the dream poured out.
Interesting.
Okay? So that number has been very, very significant in my entire journey. So I wound up going to a Wilcott conference in 2010, where he actually interpreted one of my dreams for me.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Which was really cool.
Fun.
Yeah, very cool. It was a 3-day conference, so we spent a lot of time talking about sorts of great things. And turns out my room bill was $222.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Now I found Dolores because of back then David was talking about the 2012 ascension
shift.
time.
Yeah.
The shift. Yeah. And Dolores had a video on YouTube about the new Earth, and I wanted to see what she had. And I watched that video and I fell in love immediately with her and got into her work. Well, that last session that I just had that I talked to you guys about, that I explained earlier, guess how long that session was?
2 hours and 22 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So my higher self is like, hello.
Right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I've had some interesting experiences with 444 that I shared with you.
Yeah.
You know, I read I can't remember if I've ever shared it on the podcast or not, but I'll share my quick story with you guys. I'll try and make it somewhat brief. So I was reading, I have a friend Nick, who's who has another friend who wrote this book that I want to have on the show called The Messengers. And The Messengers is basically, funny enough, the author of The Messengers, he was had some crazy skin disorder, and he tried everything with conventional medicine. Here's a synchronicity, just tying in what we've been talking about, because tried everything with conventional medicine, didn't work. He went to try hypnotherapy, and it wasn't the QHHT, it was just straight hypnotherapy. Well, during his hypnotherapy session, he had an angelic entity appear to him, and he said the whole Akashic Records was downloaded into him, then it like exploded outwards, and it was this incredible experience. He had a spontaneous healing afterwards. So, just rocked his world, stuff he wasn't even open to or whatever. Anyway, so he ended up getting involved with hypnotherapy. There was a guy who then started recounting his memory as supposedly as Paul the Apostle in Jesus's times. And so it turns into, them writing a book as this guy's under trance for 6 months, and it's his detailed experiences. And what is the name? I forget the name of the author. You can actually download the book, The Messengers, free on his website. So really interesting read about what Jesus was saying and doing. And it's like, firsthand account through this guy who claims to be Paul the Apostle, who's really shy about it, by the way. He didn't want to put out a book at first. And so the whole book is not only his recounting under hypnosis, but also the whole story of them putting out the book. And there's a lot of angelic connection through 444, which is, I guess, the angelic frequency. And so at 444, he'd wake up with downloads of information. And so I was telling my friend, right after I'd finished the book, I was telling a friend who was over all about the book and how interesting it was, and hearing what Jesus supposedly was really like, and really just teaching the same stuff we're talking about here, right? As I'm telling him about it, I was like, yeah, and these angels would always communicate at 444, and they would come through, through electrical devices. They can, play with the lights and things like that. And just as I'm telling him this, the alarm in my house goes off. Like, it's like midnight. My house alarm goes off. Like, what? Like, what? I go downstairs. Is something cooking, burning? I don't know. Nothing. So then, like 5 hours later, I'm still up. Well, I ended up being up really late with my friend who was visiting, Tyler. And then maybe 4 or 5 hours later, someone tags me on Facebook with something about angels, which was weird. It's like, oh, look at this, synchronicity. Like, as I'm telling him and reading the post, the alarm goes off again. So it was cool. And then, I had a friend who came to visit, and she was like, when she first got to town, she goes, I didn't sleep last night. These entities were like taking me away in my sleep and yelling, you're on the 444 frequency. She had no idea what it meant. So yeah, it's really cool when you start paying attention to certain, for you, it was like 222 and these sorts of cues that become significant to different people for different reasons. And as you give energy to them, it can become a way to play and connect with things beyond and source and the angelic realm and guides. And down the rabbit hole it goes.
Absolutely. It's the way to get messages. I think it's a great way to get messages. Confirmation. Affirmation.
Yeah.
What was I just thinking about?
Right.
Right. And when I see this number, I told you when I got here yesterday, the first number I see on the way here is 444.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, for me, I've played with it in a way where I'll say, okay, I'm wanting some insight about something. So I'll even say, okay, if I should do this, let me see this sign. Or if it means this, let me see this sign. If this, then you can either just say ask for one as a confirmation, or you could ask for give me the pro and the con. Okay, if it's this, then give me, if I see this sign, then it means this. If I see this sign, it means that. And how many times, I'm not going to say every time I've seen something, but I've had some really wild ones where like, are you kidding me? Did that just come to me right now? So this is a great way, guys, to play, to start experimenting, to see what's true for you without rigorous scientific study, right?
It's so true. I like that. Show me this. I've done that. Show me this before I get home.
Yeah. If I should do this, show me this, within the next 12 hours, or, kind of set up the parameters and put it out there to your higher self and to the universe and see, to source, whatever you want to call it, to your guides, and see what comes through. You will be very surprised in some cases.
Well, yeah. And remember, because your higher self is always, always, always with you, wanting to help you. That's their job. To help you, to guide you.
But you gotta meet it halfway, right?
If you ask, they're like, yes, here you go.
Yeah. Thank you for finally asking.
Thanks for letting me do my job.
Giving me something to do. Yeah, I'm up here twiddling my thumbs in bliss.
Some people think, I'm bothering them. No. They want to help you so much. And the more you ask, the more they help.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Erica, this has been quite a pleasure to connect with you and to share. We've been talking about doing this for quite some time, so I'm very happy to have been able to. And like I said, it's an extra bonus to be able to connect live and direct with you. I will anxiously await your book, and we'll have you back on the show, of course. And we're actually recording this. We're going to do some co-host episodes as well, so that'll be fun.
It will.
Yeah. So
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. By the time this comes out, we'll probably release some of the co-host episodes because this one's recorded a little quicker. Like these longer ones, I usually record a little bit in advance, whereas the dailies are shorter notice. So you guys have probably heard Erica before at this point, but hey, it's fun to flip flop things sometimes. Let's see. I do have a question for you. I always leave it off with anyone that I have on, and that is 60 seconds or less. What is the meaning of life according to Dr. Erica?
Meaning of life is to remember who you are. Remember that, you're nothing but love, and try to live your life in every moment and every second with that thought at the forefront of your brain. You are source. You are here experiencing. So that's the meaning of it. You're here to experience.
Yeah.
And you're here to experience love.
You're God-godding.
God-godding. We're all little creators. We're all creators.
Love is the answer. Now, what was the question? It's like my favorite.
It's always the answer.
Always the answer. Alrighty. Thank you so much, Erica. This has been a true pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, everyone, that concludes this week's interview episode. If you have enjoyed this positive download from our hearts and minds to yours, please take a minute, give us a rating or review on iTunes, since iTunes is the holy grail of all things podcasting. Your good reviews help us to reach more listeners. Also, we would be extremely appreciative if you would tell your friends and family about the show. Our sincere intent with the Positive Head podcast is to spread positivity to the world because we're selfish, quite honestly. I say that jokingly, but really only halfway joking. I'm referring to the good kind of selfish based on the knowing that we all get what we give in this life, because when we give, we're actually always giving to extensions of self, since we're all really one in the same consciousness, just in different bodies. So if you want to be a good selfish along with us by helping to spread the positivity, by all means, please proceed to shout about the Positive Head podcast from your rooftop. Otherwise, as you continue on your fabulous journey in this 3D reality, be sure to remember this. As long as you ain't dead, you're already positive ahead. Journey well, everyone, and thank you for being.